Guildford Joint Committee, and thank you for joining us. The Joint Committee aims to improve outcomes and value for money for residents by strengthening local democracy and improving partnership work within the borough. My name is Councillor John Rigg, and I am the member of... Sorry, was there an interruption? No? And I am member of the Guildford Borough Council, appointed as chairman of this committee. In line with government guidance, this meeting will not be held in public for social distancing reasons, but we are allowed to hold the meeting remotely, and this meeting is available for public viewing. The formal recording of this meeting made by Surrey County Council will be available for repeated viewing afterwards on the Council's website. This meeting will be run in accordance with the Joint Committee's procedure rules and both Councils' best practice for remote meetings. I would remind all participants that you have received rules, how this meeting will be run, and please abide by those. It will be more difficult to manage digitally than in person, so we need to have more gaps in the discussions to facilitate these changes. Before we start, I'll introduce the officers who will be presenting reports, followed by members of the committee on this meeting. The officers are Parking Manager, GBC, Andy Harkin, the On-Street Parking Coordinator, Liz Haydney, the Waste Parking and Fleet Services Manager, Chris Wheeler, the Principal Transport Development Planning Officer from Surrey County Council, Kirsty Wilkinson, and the Area Head Highways Manager, Brahm Asadi and Kevin Ratnasingham. I also have the support of Greg Yeoman, Michelle Collins and Lydia Woodridge. I'll now read out members of the committee. When I introduce you, please do indicate that you're present so that we have confirmation of who is present for this meeting. Josh Bigmore.
Present.
Mark Brett Warburton.
Present.
Graham Elwood. Graham Elwood. Matt Furness.
Present.
Angela Goodwin.
Present.
David Goodwin.
Present.
Julie Isles. Julia McShane.
Present.
Bob McShee.
Present.
Marsha Mosley.
Present, Chairman.
Susan Parker.
Present, Chairman.
George Potter.
Present.
Joe Randall. Joe Randall. Caroline Reeves, we know is not here. Pauline Searle.
Present, Chairman.
Paul Spooner. Keith Taylor.
Present.
Fiona White.
Present, Chairman.
Keith Witham.
Present.
So it looks as though we have got Julie Isles, Joe Randall, Caroline Reeves and Paul Spooner to check. Did I miss any of those? Anyone here? No? Well, we'll come to apologies in a minute. In terms of voting on items of this meeting, at the end of the discussion on each item, I will ask committee members if they are in support of the recommendations. I will assume members are in support of the recommendations unless you indicate otherwise or have indicated on the chat function that you are not in support of the recommendation, and there will be plenty of time for you to do so. I advise all members to use the chat box to indicate at any point if you wish to speak, or use the raise your hand button. It will be noted by the chairman and/or committee officer that you wish to speak. Please note this meeting is being streamed live via a webcast. You can find the webcast via a link on the Joint Committee meeting webpage on the Guildford Borough Council website. For the members of the public who have joined us in the meeting, because you have submitted a written question or a statement, once your item is finished, you can leave this meeting by hanging up. Item 1, apologies for absence. Greg, apologies for absence.
sorry, I had to find the buttons, etc. Yes, I've had apologies from Councillor Caroline Reeves, Councillor Joe Randall, and from as well, just as you were actually running through the list there, from Graham Elwood. And Paul Spooner sent a message to say that he was a bit held up but would be late, so I expect him to come along later. I don't have a record of anything from Julie Isles.
Okay, and Marcia might have to leave early if I remember rightly, so I think that accounts for all the names we expect to see here. Minutes for approval, item 2. Please can members agree the minutes from the 1st July 2020 meeting are accurate. If anyone has a comment or an objection to the minutes, please turn on your microphone. Otherwise, I will take it that everyone is happy. Greg, can you check the meeting chat to see if any councillor has raised an objection?
Can't see any.
No, neither can I. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? If you need to make one, please turn on your camera and microphone, and I will ask Greg to check in the meeting chat room as well. Can't see any, in which case I'll move on to item 4. Chairman's announcements. Somebody just joining, presumably Julie Isles. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late.
Yes, no problem. That's fine. We'd only just started. This is Chairman's remarks. Firstly, I want to mention the congestion around Guildford Gyratory recently. The previous Borough Council over a number of years looked at the viability of a proposal to reduce Bridge Street on the Gyratory by a traffic lane as a permanent arrangement. So the opportunity was taken to test its viability. The scheme was concluded on tranche 1 of the active travel measures and were introduced during the half-term week commencing 26th October 2020. The signal refurbishment works were also being carried out during the half-term week, and the near side lane reduction was also required, incidentally, for these works. The County Council and local borough councillors have obviously received many comments, and also from bus operators. The refurbishment works have taken a little longer than anticipated and were completed on the 4th November. However, with the planned government lockdown commencing on the 5th November, it was decided to leave the measures in situ, as they can be beneficial in providing extended footways for social distancing purposes. It is proposed to continue to monitor the effects of the active travel scheme during this second lockdown and make a determination, but ahead of the commencement of the Walnut Tree Close trial, due to commence on 29th of November, provided that the lockdown is not extended beyond this date. I should also comment on the forthcoming works affecting Walnut Tree Close and lasting from November until the middle of next year. In addition to the gyratory works, these include the Walnut Tree Close experimental one-way system, the Solent Station works, and the Walnut Bridge replacement works. I'm going to go through the dates in a little bit of detail because it explains why it's going to take as long as it will. You'll see there a sequence of projects and they are taking place in different parts of Walnut Tree Close. The first is from 27th of November to 17th of February 2021, being the experimental closure of part of Walnut Tree Close. A short section of Walnut Tree Close will be made one way, northbound only, with some two-way traffic on other sections. This legacy proposal will be assessed after it is finished. From 1st of January 2021 to 16th of February, Solent station works will commence. This is a partial closure in front of the station. From the 17th of February to the 16th of March, Walnut footbridge replacement early closure works. From 17th of March, the next day, to the 25th of March, Solent resurfacing and sewer connections, which will be full closure of Walnut Tree Close in front of the station. Then 17th of March to the 1st of June 2021, Walnut Bridge replacement, and this will be a partial lane closure at the bridge works section only. Then on the 2nd to the 30th of June, Walnut Bridge replacement, including their section 278 crossing works, and which will be a partial lane closure with temporary signals. In conclusion, I think it's somewhere for most of us to try and avoid for the near future. We have a very confined town centre, and planning the sequence of these works is problematic, but the officers of both councils have hopefully found a solution to get us through the various projects. Other matters, the A3. This committee have sought to engage with Highways England on the subject of improving the A3, particularly as it passes through Guildford, which requires reinstatement of proposals to investigate and improve the situation, which have recently been removed from the government's RIS2 programme. This has left us with Surrey County Council needing to lobby Transport for the South East, and I have written to 5 MPs along the A3, as it is so important to communication and the economy of this county. I'm awaiting a reply from Guildford's MP, but have replies from others, which I will seek to progress and will report at the next Joint Committee meeting. Lastly, we discussed the idea of a car-free day in Guildford at the Infrastructure Working Group, and Surrey County Council consider the borough have sufficient powers to enable this event to take place through the controls of Guildford Borough Council, so it's been referred back to the borough to take forward. That concludes my comments. I can't see any hands up, so I will move on to agenda item 5.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
John, hold on 1 second. Councillor Furness has his hand up.
Councillor Furness.
Thank you, Chairman. It was really just to say that I have actually had a meeting with the Guildford MP, Angela Richardson, on the A3 item. We've provided a briefing there, and we are taking these points up with the MPs as well. It's not just the A3, it's most of the strategic network that Surrey is engaging with the local MPs across Surrey on.
Good, that's great to hear. So hopefully we will get a reply and we will be included in the proposals to try and lobby the government and improve things. So we also are aware of what is happening. But it's good to hear, Matt. And it might be useful, perhaps you could let me have a note of that so I can share that with the executive at Guildford. Moving on to item 5, that's petitions and petition responses. 3 petitions have been received, and the first one is Make the Drive Onslow one-way southbound. We have Mr. Lee Paget joining the meeting, and he wishes to address the committee. Good afternoon, sir, and you have up to 3 minutes to do so.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if we can go straight down to the schematic of the diagram, which I can explain the diagram probably easier. Some of you may not be familiar with that junction, but the actual junction itself is a dangerous hairpin junction. I don't have it on the screen at the moment, so I don't know if it's available to the rest of you. But coming from Farnham towards Guildford, There's a dangerous left-hand turn there, which is very acute. And I've had guests arrive who then sat-navs naturally take them that way, as I'm sure many delivery drivers do also. And immediately on turning left, you're either confronted with the concrete wall opposite, or you're directly into the path of other vehicles which may be driving southbound along the drive towards the Farnham Road. It's immensely dangerous, and I've at least twice had to slam my brakes on because I'm suddenly confronted by somebody on my side of the road having turned left. That's the first thing that drew my attention to that junction. The other occasion was then coming from Guildford Town Centre and myself turning right with a car ahead of me, because you can gain speed up it's 40 miles an hour, and I know some cars do go faster than 40 miles an hour, to go off a right, not at right angles, to go off right on that junction there. Some cars do go off speedily, and they've often been flashed by cars coming the other way from Farnham. So it is a dangerous junction, and I'm aware that there have been anecdotally many accidents at that junction. At the Clock House, the owner now lives in Abbots Close, where I live. He lived there since a child. He's now in his 50s. And he told me on many occasions people have knocked on the doors before mobile phones asking to use the phone because there have been accidents at that junction. At the other end of the road, where the crossways is, and I don't know if you've got access to the schematic, but at the other end of the crossroads, that hairpin is not as acute as it is at the top end, but any car that wishes to come from the top right, where there's number 18 crossways to go across towards Manor Way, you have to carefully go across the junction, continuously looking up to the left-hand side, lest any car comes shooting down that junction and suddenly into your vision, at which point you have to slam your brakes on. And I have heard a comment from a cyclist that she looks, listens, and then pedals like mad to get across that junction, lest the car come down at speed. And it's equally dangerous for pedestrians, also for the same reason. You can hear, but you may not see anything until the last moment. And if you're coming in the other direction to turn right into Manor Way, you again have to be very careful. As you turn right, there's nothing coming down from there. So I've been aware of all those things for many a time. And speaking to other people, they've been equally concerned by that, not least those that live in the immediate vicinity of it. And I thought of a one-way system. Speaking to the residents that live actually in the drive, they would prefer it if it started beyond their actual driveway to where their garages are, which would make sense. They can turn left or right out of their garages. But from there on towards the Farnham Road would be just the one way. What that would mean is the benefits would be at the top end by the Farnham Road. The junction would be wider then for any cars to merge at right angles. Currently, if you come to that junction, you're at an acute angle. So if you wish to turn right, which means using the bus lane opposite, you need to look over your right shoulder or trust your mirrors. And that's always dangerous because you may miss something, as we know. But coming to that angle, that junction at right angles would afford you the ability to look properly left and right. So there's benefits there. At the other end of the junction, down towards the crossways, all those speeding cars coming down that junction, either from left or right turning from the Farnham Road, that would be prevented, making that junction much, much safer. And as we know, twice has happened, at least in the past couple of years, the railings on the opposite side have been hit by cars sliding on ice. And we're coming up to that season again. As they come down the drive, they slid on ice and into the railings, damaging the sign and the railings. Unfortunately, on both occasions, it was just the railings. There were no pedestrians there. So I've come up with the idea, and it may not be the best scheme. I'm sure that the traffic engineer will know, possibly devise something better in order that those issues can be averted and the costs. And that's basically my submission.
Thank you very much. That's very good, Mr. Paget. And I think you had a good meeting with one of our officers, and I think this is now placed on the running list for consideration by the Infrastructure and Transportation Delivery Group, the working group. So I think that's as good as you could hope for. That's a result, and it will be considered as we go forward. So thank you very much. I noticed David Goodwin has his hand up. David, is that something you wish to comment on?
Yes, it is. I was contacted very early on by Mr. Paget here as regards the dangerous acute handle that's coming off Farnham Road down the drive. And I been on site along with the officers and with other local ward members, and we do see that there is a dangerous point there, and obviously, as people can see from the report, it is to go onto the list, and obviously before any alterations are made or any works undertaken, then we shall obviously have a full consultation, because there have been other comments that have been made that are not happy with the proposal and so on, and so we'll have to weigh everything up in the round, and we'll see where we can go from there. But at least it's now on the list, on the running list, and we can take it from there. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, David, and thank you, Mr. Paget. It's very good.
Thank you very much.
The next petition is regarding the parking arrangements in Station Road, Shalford, and adjacent roads to prioritise residents over commuters. And the lead petitioner was Councillor Matt Furness. So, Councillor Furness, are you wishing to talk to this?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll say a little bit on this one and the other one, to be honest, because both petitions are around parking in Shalford. This one was very much requesting a review following the public meeting that we held with the parking officer with residents of Station Road and roads adjoining, particularly around their concerns about commuter parking, taking up spaces where residents are struggling. I was really pleased to see that 78% of the residents who signed it from Station Road were in support of the parking review here, and I think that should actually be taken into strong consideration for prioritising this going forward. The second petition actually covers the whole village, so I wasn't sure why it was used as a reason not to progress the Station Road review, as it really does only say that they don't want to have a resident parking permit scheme, which I think the whole village would agree with. But it wasn't specific to this petition. So it was disappointing that both petitions have been mixed here, and I did have a chat with the parking team earlier. So, I mean, Station Road and the adjoining road residents have clearly asked for a review of parking. Resident parking is not the one on the list, so I think that makes it easier in the proposals that are put forward by the team in a review. But therefore, I would ask that the parking team reconsider their response, and that the parking review for Station Road and the adjoining roads to Station Road is prioritised, but taking into account that a resident parking permit is not an option that they would like to see. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Furness. And I can't see any other. Oh, Lisa Haydney has got her hand up. Lisa.
Hello. Hi. I just wanted to come back from that. Obviously, I had a conversation with Councillor Furness earlier. I appreciate the clarification around the two different petitions. We discussed that, discussed various options for Shalford. There is the wording around the first petition did mention prioritising residents, and the only true way to do this is a resident scheme. There's a couple of other ways that you can sort of in a roundabout way prioritise it, but it is just going to be more tricky for us to create a scheme that prioritises residents and achieves the aims that they want to achieve without introducing a resident scheme. So, I'm happy to sort of amend our response in the sense that we appreciate that residents of Shalford or Station Road want their parking addressed, but not a resident scheme. So it's just the resources that we would need to use to work out what is the appropriate sort of restrictions to meet the aims that they want.
Thank you, Lisa. Andy Harkin. Andy Harkin, your hand is up, but maybe
Andy,
you're on mute.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Apologies. Yeah, in terms of an alternative to a residence parking scheme, you can introduce commuter restrictions that only operate over, say, 1 hour a day. But were they to only, if without a residence parking scheme, such restrictions would effectively prevent residents from parking in those particular locations as well. So, it is an alternative to a residence parking scheme. But it would impose fairly heavy restrictions on the residents themselves by preventing them from parking in the locations that it suggested that commuters park there.
Okay, thank you, Andy. I think we've got to get on with the agenda, and we have got Miss Cecilia Taylor is joining the meeting and wishes to address the committee on the same subject. So, Miss Taylor, are you there? And if you are, you have 3 minutes to do this. Miss Cecilia Taylor. Greg, is she?
She's on the list as as in the meeting, but she's on mute.
Maybe she's on mute. Can't unmute is the message is coming.
Yes, I think guests might need the admin to unmute them rather than being able to unmute themselves.
Okay.
Thank you, George. Technology is a wonderful thing, isn't it? I don't know. I can't see anything that would allow me to do that.
If you go to the participants list and hover over the name, there should be 3 dots to the right-hand side. I think there's an option there to unmute them.
No, I can't see that. I can see the options, but I can't see unmute. Lee Paget was in the same situation and didn't experience this problem.
Sorry, it's Michelle here. Cecilia, we've stopped showing the presentation, and sometimes when that stops being shown, you're able to unmute yourself. Could you just try again?
Perhaps we move on with the agenda, and when... Oh, actually, no, this brings us to the end of the public participation section, so...
Might it alternative be for Ms. Taylor to dial in on the public phone number instead? Would that be another option?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll just get that number across to Cecilia. If you could just give us 1 minute.
Yes, we'll hold on. I can actually do item 6, members' written questions. There were no questions have been received. So, and equally, item 7, public written questions, no questions have been received. So, when we are ready to go again, it will be on to agenda item 8. Best laid plans of mice and men. Still no progress, Greg.
No, it looks as though Cecilia is dialing in. So,
Sorry, just give us just a sec more.
Okay.
Michelle, am I right in saying that once she's dialed in, she needs to press *6 to unmute herself, or does that not apply on this call?
Often when people are dialing in, they're not muted when they dial in. It's only if you mute yourself whilst you're in the meeting that you should have to do that, but that is another alternative. I've just seen someone dialing in. Is that Cecilia Taylor?
Hello.
Ah,
Can you hear me?
oh, we can hear you.
Oh, hello. Dialed in. Don't know what was the matter with that.
Miss
Shall I
Taylor.
just carry on?
Yes, please do. How nice to have you with us now. Carry on. You
Thank
have
you.
3 minutes.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon. Yes, so Matt held a call very kindly with the residents to discuss parking issues in our village pre-COVID in Station Road and adjacent roads. We did find after I didn't attend the meeting, but some friends attended, and they did say there didn't seem to be any decisions, actions, votes, or formal minutes produced. So all I saw was that on Facebook, the councillor appeared on Facebook page with his petition to review the parking arrangements in Station Road and adjacent roads to prioritise residents over commuters. So the attendees were sort of quite surprised by this, as they hadn't agreed to that petition. So, you know, we sort of were surprised, well, why is the councillor putting that petition? Anyway, so that happened. So we felt as residents that there was a danger with that petition. The only way to prevent commuters, to prioritise residents, was to have a permanent parking scheme introduced. So that was why I created my scheme, my petition, as an antidote to that other petition. So a large number of Shalford residents, more Shalford residents, signed my petition than the other one. And for these reasons, that I'm going to lay out now. So the purchase of a residence permit will not guarantee a parking space outside your house. You'd risk paying extra money to the council for no benefit. The annual permit fee is £130 for 2 cars, but there's no guarantee this won't significantly rise year on year. It's a regressive tax that will impact those in the community who are already struggling living in the smaller houses. Parking restrictions will make it difficult for visiting family and friends who will need temporary permit parking. There will be more signs, markings, and visible traffic wardens, which will harm the street's character and cause anxiety and worries about where you're going to park. There's no guarantee that after buying permits, the council will not further reduce the available parking spaces without the residents' agreement. If such a scheme is introduced, the council would be unlikely to reverse it, even if it fails to produce the hoped-for benefits for the residents. People didn't move from London to a quaint village to experience the same problems, especially when there are none. So since this meeting took place way back in June, the country has experienced this terrible crisis, which has changed people's ways of working. So, for example, us on this call, permits would be solving a problem that doesn't exist at the moment. There are plenty of spaces in the village during the day because fewer people are commuting. This change is long-term for many of us working from home now. Parking is more challenging now in the evenings and weekends, which means if residents' parking is introduced, then the residents would suffer and pay for it, not the commuters. This
That's
petition supports...
3 minutes up.
Oh, is that it? Well, I just want free parking in Shalford Village. Keep our village a village, not a suburb of Guildford. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Very good.
Thank you.
Sorry you had the trouble connecting with us, but we got the message, and you'll also know that the officer's recommendation is not to introduce residence parking permits, but this, like the previous petition, will go to another committee meeting for further discussion. But I think you can take some confidence from the officer's recommendation to a degree. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
This brings us to the end of the public participation section of today's meeting. If you're leaving us at this point, you might like to know that there are feedback forms available on our website. Before we proceed to work through the business of the agenda, I would like to remind members to use the raise your hand function or type a request into the chat box, which you have so far if you wish to speak, and to only switch your microphone and camera on when you're actually speaking. Item 8 is the on-street parking business plan 2021 to 2022 for decision. Everyone has had the opportunity to read through the parking business plan, so I'm not expecting a detailed presentation, but I will invite Andy Harkin, Parking Manager at Guildford Borough Council, or Lisa Halfpenny, On-Street Parking Coordinator, to introduce the report and update the committee with any developments, if there have been any. Andy or Lisa.
Hi there. Yes. There's no developments in terms of the report. There's the various recommendations that have been put forward in relation to the start of the next review, and obviously the opportunities that we're looking into to extend the pay by phone that we've got in some of our pay and display car parks into on-street parking locations, which in turn should assist us in terms of replacing some of the on-street pay and display equipment, which is fairly long in the tooth now. But if there's any questions for Lisa or I, please feel free to fire away.
Thank you, Andy. I see Keith Taylor's name. Hand is up. Keith.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm perfectly happy with the recommendations here, but the only thing I wanted to mention briefly, bearing in mind that we've had some changes of membership on the borough side of the Joint Committee, is that everybody understood the reference to these recommendations having already been through the Parking and Air Quality Working Group. And the background to that is that a lot of the main executive functions of the Joint Committee, particularly in areas like highways improvements and parking and so on, there's a hell of a lot of detail, a lot of which bluntly isn't very appropriate to discuss in a committee of 20 people. So we took a decision at that stage to set up a couple of working groups, one of which I still chair as well as being vice chairman of the committee, is looking at parking and air quality, and the other is infrastructure delivery and transportation. Just to say that we did a couple of months ago now have a meeting for the parking and air quality working group with where the 8 members involved had a much more detailed look at the recommendations that are coming before you today, and I think it's fair to say that we were happy with them. So it was really just to make sure people understood the background of this having already been considered by, albeit a smaller group, but in quite a lot more detail than we'll hopefully have time for today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Keith. That's very helpful. And yes, you're quite right to draw attention to that. Fiona White. Fiona, I'm sorry if I missed your hand earlier, but off you go.
Not a problem, Chairman. I've got a couple of comments on the report. The first one is to do with the electric vehicle charging points. And obviously, I'm very much in favour of the actions that are set out here. But I just wondered, in view of the government's announcement about bringing forward the date for stopping the sale of petrol and diesel cars to 2030, what the timescale is for actually rolling out these electric VCPs throughout the borough. It's going to be a major task, But obviously it needs to be completed reasonably quickly given the pressure to change over to the electric vehicles, and there is going to be a cost to it. So I just wondered if somebody could give an update on timescale and how those costs are going to be met. And going on to the park and ride permissions, again, I'm all in favour of extending the times that the park and rides are open. But with regard to the Onslow Park and Ride, I know that the University of Surrey has a legal interest in the land, and I just wondered if their consent was needed before the changes could be made on that park and ride site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Fiona. I think the whole question of charging points is going to be moved a lot higher up the agenda, Fiona. So other than to note your concern, I'm not proposing to deal with it here, if that's okay. But other than to say I entirely agree with your comments. The next one was Matt Furness, Councillor Furness.
Thank you, Chairman. It's actually the first one was on the same point as Councillor White there. This was being discussed over a year ago, so I was just wondering, could we have a timescale, please, on when actually these planning permission changes are going to happen? This has been a long time coming, so it would be helpful if a timetable could be submitted to this committee, so we actually know when.
Yeah.
The second point is just on the recent announcement by GBC to lower car parking charges. Is this signalling a change from the drive to not through policy, which is referenced throughout this report? And is it looking to continue that proposal, which may have an impact on park and ride usage? There was always a determination to keep parking at a certain level to encourage people to park outside the town on park and ride sites and take the bus in, our new electric fleet that has had a heavy amount of investment, rather than driving straight into the centre. So it would be helpful if there has been a change in policy that it is articulated.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Furness. I'm certainly not aware of any change in policy. I don't know if Andy Harkin wants to comment on the proposed new rates, but the ambition to improve park and ride and carry on with the policy of drive to, not through, is unlikely, in my view, to change. Andy, did you want to respond to
in terms of, if I can pick up on some of the things that Fiona's mentioned regarding the EV charging points. The costs and timescales, obviously, we are assisting our county council colleagues in modifying the parking restrictions. Lisa's doing a lot of work with the county in terms of bringing forward their proposals to put in additional charging points. I suppose with the improvements in battery technology and charging technology, it's an ever-changing feast of precisely how much charging infrastructure local councils will have to put in to meet demand. And clearly, I'm sure the oil companies and the like will be looking at introducing greater amounts of charging infrastructure within their filling stations, for example, so on and so forth. And if improvements in technology do increase at the rate that they've done over in recent years, then it's possible that people will charge their cars in much the same way that they fill up at the petrol station. So, perhaps it's quite difficult second guessing to some extent exactly how much charging infrastructure needs to be put in to meet the anticipated demand. In terms of the question raised by Councillor Furness about the charging structure, one of the things that we're trying to do at the present moment in time is encourage increased dwell time. Whilst which in turn will occupy the parking spaces that we've got within the town centre, hopefully a little greater than they are being at the present moment in time. So it's something that we're doing to try and rejuvenate the town centre in view of the COVID situation. And it is a temporary arrangement in the first instance, and it's something that can be reviewed, in the coming months to try and to see its effectiveness in rejuvenating the town centre retail environment. But we are mindful that we want to encourage use of the park and ride as well as the town centre car parks, and we'll work with our county council colleagues to try and ensure that people have the choice to park where they want to park and travel into the town centre in the most appropriate fashion.
Thank you, Andy. I've got George Potter, followed by Bob McShee, followed by Joss Bigmore, followed by Chris Wheeler, and then Mark Brett Warburton. So, George.
Okay, so helps to turn my camera on as well. Okay. I have one comment and one question. The comment is it's banging the same drum all over again, and I know there's nothing which can be done about it in the short term, but I still maintain that that when we look at our park and ride and we look at comparison cities such as Winchester, not that far, one clear difference that we have compared to a lot of other places which implement drive to, not through more successfully, is they operate a charging system of you pay per vehicle that you park at the park and ride, rather than buying a ticket per person who gets on the bus into the town centre. Again, I appreciate, my understanding is I think it's essentially the bus company that sets the fare structure, but I would hope that's something we can explore in changing perhaps as we move forward. We're trying to expand the usage of the park and ride. The question I have is, I see in the report that Bowers Lane has been designated as one of the easy win locations, which is excellent. I'm really pleased to hear that. It's in my ward, and residents have been complaining about issues there for a number of months. However, what I'm curious about is that this report is the first I have seen or heard that it's going to be an easy win, that if there is any work going to be done on it. And this also includes, after both residents having emailed about it months ago and myself having sent emails about it to relevant team members. So, again, my question is essentially, one, what are the details, what is envisaged for Bowers Lane, and indeed for all of the easy win streets? It'd be useful to know a bit more information about what is envisaged. And also perhaps if in future ward councils be given more of a heads up rather than being reliant on us being in the joint committee to find out what's happening. Thank you very much.
Lisa, did you want to respond just to that particular point?
Hi, yeah, no problem. So in terms of Bowers Lane, the reason that there's a bit of history with Bowers Lane, as with all locations on the list. Andy has more sort of detail of that, but I have been in contact in recent weeks with the police, who have been having a significant amount of issues there, and a sort of being tied up dealing with those issues. I take on board your sort of suggestion of having more involvement with councillors, and we do that with the scored list. Happy to send you over a list of what's going forward in the March part of the review, where, as I explained, sort of outside of this meeting, we look at all the different aspects, but this was deemed something that was using up a lot of police resources, and has previously been on the agenda to be addressed. So that was why it was selected for a quick win.
Okay, no, thank you for the explanation. I won't consume any more time on this, but also I did send you an email on the 4th of September about Bowers Lane and a number of other locations, which I'll resend to you because it might be useful to talk about this offline. Thank you very much.
Sure. No worries.
Thank you both. Bob McShee, Councillor Bob McShee.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments are about Onslow Park and Ride, which is poorly sited for shoppers and is underused. Could the underused space be offered to the hospital for staff and visitors, and also perhaps to key workers before being offered to business use? Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I do understand historically that's been a bit of a hot potato, but we will note your question and I will try and find the answer for you. Next.
I can respond to that if you would like.
Yes, please do. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of Onslow Park and Ride, yes, it is restricted in both lease and planning terms. So it's restricted in lease to be used as a park and ride, and also in planning terms in that, and it's also restricted, it was restricted in hours of use, but we can use it for longer hours. We've managed to succeed in extending the planning permission for when we could use it. The other side of using it in terms of the bus companies is, does it make commercial sense for them to extend those hours? And that's part of the discussion that we were planning to have before COVID. However, COVID has changed the circumstances quite significantly. And as it stands at this moment, that particular site is used as a COVID testing centre, and we agreed to sublet that with the permission of the university for at least another 12 months. So it's not going to be used as a park and ride, we don't think, until 2022. So there's certainly a delay there. That's not a bad thing in the current situation, because demand across all of the park and rides is significantly down, and we're working through those issues. In terms of using it for other uses, I think that there are significant lease and planning challenges associated with that. It's something we have been exploring. There aren't any easy answers. There's a lot of work required to change that position, and in any case, it needs to go through at least a planning process, which isn't guaranteed to be successful because we would like it to be. So I think it's fairly challenging and a very long-term picture we've got to paint for Onslow.
Good. Thank you, Chris. Josh Bigmore, Councillor Bigmore.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate really what Andy said, that there's no change in parking policy from Guildford. We're still drive to and not through, and fully committed to park and ride. Just by pure coincidence, I had a call with Edward Hodgson of Stagecoach today to discuss park and ride and the issues pre-COVID that have been exacerbated by COVID, because I think we're all aware that we need to get more people using it, and obviously town centre parking charges are a factor in how people use park and ride. So we're obviously well aware of the interdependency between the two, but certainly there is no change in policy from Guildford. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bigmore. And that leaves Mark Brett Warburton.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just picking up on two things. The park and ride, are we able to offer some incentives to encourage the use? I know that it's dropped in usage over the past few months, but in order to encourage people to get back into the habit of thinking about park and ride as part of this process, if we're going to be looking at lowering the parking, off-street parking, we can have some sort of offers to encourage people to at least try park and ride and see whether they like using it. I think that's quite important. And the other aspect is, I remember going back several years, I think actually Woking was one of the towns, and there were several others that had overpriced their off-street and parking, and that drove away visitors to the centre of town. I think that's a good example. That was at the peak when there was a lot of activity going on. That's a good example that how sensitive parking prices can be. And I was just wondering if Andy could maybe give us a bit more detail on the comparison or the thoughts between parking prices in Guildford and our commercial competitors, the other towns nearby, where people will go to use facilities and shop in those other areas compared to Guildford.
Thank you, Mark. I think I rather agree with George, that we need to get right the charges and whether it's pay to park or pay to ride, which I think may be a bigger debate. But Andy, Chris Wheeler, you've got your hand up to respond to this, presumably.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yeah, in terms of we are in the process of engaging with Stagecoach about what the post-COVID recovery looks like, and it is very much a commercial offering and how we can do that. I think the other point there is that traditionally the park and ride and the bus services supporting it have been paid for from on-street revenue, which has also been significantly hampered by the COVID situation too. So the big question is where would the money come from, and that's a discussion that needs to be had as well. So yeah, absolutely. Stagecoach are engaged and want to obviously improve their ridership and the health of that, and we want that to happen too, both Surrey County Council and Guildford Borough Council. So those discussions will be taking place over the coming months. I think at the moment Stagecoach are being quite well supported by central government, who have said that people should work from home and people shouldn't use public transport. So it makes it very difficult for them to operate in that environment. When that changes and the government is no longer in a position to provide support, then we've got to look at how we protect and grow that service back up again, and that's definitely a big piece of work that's in its starting blocks as it stands. So hopefully that helps with that. In terms of the parking charges, I'm very happy to defer back to Andy. Andy, are you happy to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. I'm more than happy to talk about that. You know, in terms of the parking charges in other towns, Guildford is competitive with the other towns. We're cheaper than Woking. We're comparable to Woking in terms of pricing and the other large retail centres within the area. One of the things that came out of the parking study that we undertook last year was that our users value convenience more greatly than price. So modifying behaviours and the like is more difficult to some extent because they are more convenience sensitive, for want of a better word, than they are price sensitive. But obviously, what we want to do as an authority is support the park and ride, as Josh Bigmore has mentioned, whilst at the same time, supporting the local economy during this difficult period and trying to get it back up on its feet.
Okay, if there are no, is that a legacy hand, Mark, or did you want to say?
Well, I was just going to come in about the point about the park and ride, where the money comes from. In the past, we've provided funding from, I think some of it came from Experience Guildford, to seed park and ride in the run up to Christmas, for instance, or in order to try and encourage people to at least try using park and ride. So maybe there's an opportunity there to think about maybe getting a couple of weekends in or something like that, where we can actually try to encourage people to get back into the habit of using park and ride again.
Thank you, Mark. So I don't see any other hands up. So the Joint Committee needs to agree the recommendation, which we might have on the screen in a minute. These are the recommendations, which I hope you've all seen and have now had a chance to comment. Are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much indeed. I don't see any other objections. So item 9 is Foreman Road and the White Lane speed limit reduction, which is for decision. Similarly, I'm not expecting a full presentation of this report, and we'll now invite Kirsty Wilkinson, Principal Transport Director, Principal Transport Development Planning Officer, there's a mouthful, at the County Council to introduce it. Kirsty.
Thank you. So yeah, we're just hoping to change the speed limit from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, starting at the junction of Foreman Road with Ashchurch Road, going south to White Lane, and it will finish approximately 70 metres south of Warren Farm. The reason for this reduction in speed limit is due to the number of residential developments in the area. There'll be an increase in vehicles, but more importantly, pedestrians and cyclists. So the reduction in speed limit should improve the environment for all road users. It's been designed by our highways team and approved by our road safety team and police as well. And it's fully funded by Section 106 contributions from those developments that I mentioned earlier, which is the whole drive to the reduction in speed limit. So yeah, that's basically the summary, and we're looking for a recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Kirsty. I've got two hands up. Matthew Furness, followed by Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. It's really just to say thank you very much to Kirsty and the team. It's a fantastic initiative that they've done here. Dropping the speed limit down, particularly on these bends and with that weak bridge, will help significantly in the local area. And it's come at a very good time, considering we've just done all the road repairs down White Lane as well and put extra anti-skid surfacing down. So no, full support on this. It's been a long time coming, so thank you very much, Kirsty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Furness. Councillor Spooner.
Thank you very much. I'm very much in the dark, aren't I? Apologies for that. But I just wanted to say that I fully support this. Like Councillor Furness, I think this is a very good initiative. I think it's definitely needed with the amount of development that's happening locally. So just to say, fully supportive. Thank you, Chairman.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I don't see any other hands up. The Guildford Joint Committee is asked to agree that the speed limit from Foreman Road junction with Guildford Road to approximately 70 metres south of Warren Farm on White Lane is reduced from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Good. I don't see any objections, so that looks to be carried as well. Now, supplementary agenda item 9A, the Blackwater Valley speed limit reduction, is published as a supplementary item on 17th of November, so rather short notice for the members, for which I apologise. This item is being taken as an urgent item under section 104B of the Local Government Act 1972. And the reason why it's considered urgent and couldn't wait until the next meeting is as follows. The justification given by the officer for including it in the meeting is as I recount here. This project recently transferred from Guildford Borough Council to Surrey County Council. I believe Colin Kemp was instrumental in the transfer of the scheme to Surrey County Council and agreeing delivery. The delivery of the scheme is dependent on time-limited funding from the LEP. Also, as the design was commissioned by GBC, Mott MacDonald, their consultant, needs to complete the detailed design, which included the changed speed limit. The speed limit will affect the design of the roadworks and affect the safety of the users and those building and maintaining the works. The commencement of the scheme is likely to be in March 2021, subject to Cabinet approval on 24th of November for funding, and the speed limit would need to be in place for that time. This is the first joint committee available since the project was handed over, and I would be extremely grateful if it could be considered as soon as possible. Bahram Asadi is the traffic engineer at Surrey County Council and is able to give us some more background. Bahram, are you there to comment?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, basically what you said exactly. We need to have them to have the speed limit in place before the start of the works, which is going to be in March. And as you said, again, this is for the safety for people working there. And the because obviously it's national speed limit. So basically this is why, this is the rush that we had to get it in. We had to get it in really this time, rather next committee, which is March, will be too late.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Graham. Thank you. Councillor Spooner, I see your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's actually, once again, to endorse this. I do feel that it's unfortunate that it's had to come through at the last minute, but there's no reason at all why this shouldn't be supported, in my opinion. It's necessary, and if it enables us to get external funding or funding support to deliver this, I entirely endorse it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, and I share those views. So I don't see any other hands up. The recommendations, Greg, if you could put them on the screen. We're asked to agree a reduction in the current national speed limit to a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit on a section of the Blackwater Valley Road and surrounding slip roads approaching the roundabout, and to promote a traffic regulation order for the introduction of 40 miles an hour. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed. Agreed. Agreed.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. So we now go back to the previous agenda, which is agenda item number 10, which is the decision tracker. I'm reminded all items on the tracker marked as open will stay on the tracker to the next meeting. Any items marked as closed and recommend remove can be agreed to be removed by the committee. So do the members of the committee agree to close the items as shown in the decision tracker? And I see now someone just announcing they're having to leave. So do the members of the committee agree to close the items as shown in the decision tracker?
Agreed. Agreed.
Good, that's helpful, thank you. Item 11 is the forward programme for 2020-2021. Please note the contents of the forward plan and let the committee know if you have any suggestions for future items. As you may know, we have an informal meeting in January to discuss what should be added or what should be changed on the forward programme. Greg, are there any questions or requests to speak on the meeting chat? I can't see any.
Councillor Potter's put his hand up.
Oh, George. Councillor Potter.
It's actually just a question, and my apologies for my ignorance, because I don't think I've been through this before. But we've got on the 17th of March, we've got the parking review and approval of requests that have met the threshold. Could I ask if we're going what the threshold is, what the threshold actually is for this sort of thing, please? This will be the parking review item.
I can answer that. So the threshold will slightly change dependent, because we have a lot of requests, and obviously it depends on allocation of resources. So last review we had a threshold of 24, which was gave us a certain amount to progress that was sort of deemed appropriate, but it does depend on sort of the size of schemes, for example, resident schemes and things. We may need to reconsider the threshold, but I imagine this year's will be sort of fleshed out in the Parking Air Quality Working Group once I've managed to get through the scoring. Obviously accident history and things is all going up over the years as it does, so no doubt it will be slightly higher to give us that number.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Were there any other hands up? I don't
no, I don't think there's anything else.
Don't see any other hands up. In which case, I can take it that the forward programme at this point is agreed.
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 Thank you. Which brings us to item 12, date of the next meeting. Please note the date of the next meeting is March 17th, 2021. Details on the formal meeting will be confirmed nearer the time. I'm assuming we'll still be doing virtual meetings, but fingers crossed that is not the case. We've got an informal meeting of the full committee on January 20th, 2021, which might be worth noting as well. This concludes our business for this afternoon. May I thank members, residents and officers for attending. I see Greg's put up a note. Please do provide us with feedback on email, Twitter or the feedback forms.